So, The Science of Getting Rich, Think and Grow Rich, and The Richest Man in Babylon, which I can't seem to find my copy of at the moment. All three are considered financial education classics or success classics. Um, they all three combine different aspects of thinking about success and money. Um, you know, the Science of Getting Rich and Think and Grow Rich both come at from the mindset and manifestation um, framework. Um, Napoleon Hill, who is the one that wrote Think and Grow Rich, is very big on a burning desire, belief, planning, persistence. Um, Wallace, who wrote The Science of Getting Rich, also um, does have faith or belief sprinkled in throughout The Science of Getting Rich because um, he references formless substance. You might not call it God or anything like that to avoid being overly religious, but um, you know, in the Science of Getting Rich, it's always formless substance. You um, kind of use that belief in something that is then going to help you manifest it. Um, and then the richest man in Babylon has a lot of practical financial habits, talks about stewardship, just lays down some of the principles for um, personal finances. So when you combine these three works, you kind of um, get the mindset, you get your um, clarity about what you want to focus on, a burning desire. You channel belief and planning into, and then the use of manifestation, to work towards becoming wealthy. Um, if you have a um, burning, desire or a definite purpose, it's easy to focus on that. You can plan to a certain degree, but um, have planning and manifestation running parallel. Um, you can kind of multiply your efforts. In Think and Grow Rich, it talks about defining a specific goal, writing it down, um, as a definite purpose. Um, when it talks about writing that, you know, burning desire down, um, there is an set of action steps that it lays out for doing that, and part of it is after you write it out and sign it and set a date for when you're going to accomplish it, you read it morning and night so it kind of um, plants it in your mind so it keeps it front and center. You're okay, I'm gonna start a $10 million business. That saying it once, okay, that's a wish, but if you write it out, it's more specific than just wanting to own a $10 million business. And if you keep repeating it, that's, one step towards achieving that goal. The science of getting rich, um, it talks about forming a mental picture of what you want and um, impressing it on formless substance. You're holding your um, purpose with unwavering faith. Um, you're impressing it on thinking stuff, which is really the formless substance. So combining, you know, those two things from the books, you can start taking action. When you start taking action, it becomes something more than just a wish. As you um, start taking steps towards your goals, it becomes, you know, more grounded in reality. Um, so then when you shift from a creative, um, into the creative, you become more of an abundant mindset. And you want to have, that creative way of thinking, not just a, competitive way of thinking. Wallace Wattles in The Science of Getting Rich emphasizes creative over competitive, because it changes the way you think. There's an infinite amount of opportunities. There's always abundance, whereas if you're thinking competitively, you're thinking more lack, you're, um, you know, thinking more scarcity. Um, so, when you combine um, that creative thinking from The Science of Getting Rich with Napoleon Hill's, um, you know, reinforcing things with faith, how you believe in what you're doing. If you believe in your burning desire, you combine, if you combine, um, you know, the thoughts and way of doing things from these books, create a more comprehensive way of attacking things. So, you can train yourself to um, think in terms of expansion, how you can serve, um, how can I create more value here, how can I grab this before someone else does, um, which might seem like scarcity or, competition. Um, but really, what you want to think about is how can you um, take your idea to market before someone steals your idea by being the first one to take action. If you say, oh, I'm going to invent XYZ, and then you go home and watch Netflix for the next 5 years and you don't take any action on that, then in 5 years, someone might bring that idea to market and you'll say, oh, they stole my idea. No, they didn't steal your idea. They just had the same idea and took it to market. They took action on it and it paid off. Um, so you just want to think, with the mindset of um, opportunities and then take action on those opportunities. You don't want to um, have any kind of mindset that would attract guilt or scarcity because that'll hinder any progress you might make towards those goals. So when you take the way of thinking about things from both the science of getting rich and think and grow rich, and you start um, moving towards your burning desire or your goal, if you start taking the action and manifesting things into your life, then, as you start to make money, you can apply the principles from the richest man in Babylon. And one of the principles was paying yourself first. The book insists on paying yourself 10% of everything you earn before you pay anyone else. Before you start paying your bills, you automatically, you know, put 10% into a savings account over here that you're not going to touch. Um, you want to create the capital base. Other books assume you'll invest or use um, productivity. So you want to automate the 10% um, going into savings for you to use for investments. Um, and a lot of the books these days, um, that's coming from the principle from the richest man in Babylon is a book you see now is referencing that without necessarily giving the richest man in Babylon um, credit per se. Um, so something else you want to consider is um, putting your money to work, but also guarding it or protecting it. In the richest man in Babylon, it talks about making your gold multiply or investing wisely. And it also talks about guarding your treasures from loss. Um, Now, Napoleon Hill in Think and Grow Rich talks about organized planning and mastermind alliances. So those two keys can be help you um, multiply your knowledge and help um, take what money you might have and multiply it and in the process of multiplying your money, organized planning and the Mastermind Alliance could also help you to look for ways to protect the money that you are multiplying. Um, the Science of Getting Rich, Wallace Wattles stresses, um, effectiveness, to work smarter, not harder in some places. And he also talks about um, creating value. Um, does a trade you're doing or a business deal you're doing, does it provide the other party um, more value than they're paying you um, in money? If I can't remember where in the book it is, but there's an example of if you were to trade a painting to an Eskimo, um, they might not have much use for the painting. But if you trade the Eskimo, a gun for the furs they're trading you, the Eskimo would have more value for that gun because then they could go and use the gun to get more furs. So, in that example, the Eskimo would get more value out of the gun than out of the painting. So, when you're doing business deals, you want to consider, um, the value you're bringing your customers or clients. Um, Now, Wallace D. Wallace talks about thinking in a certain way and acting in a certain way in the science of getting rich. So, there's certain ways you might go about doing your job or running a business. It's not to say certain ways are right and other ways are wrong. It's just there's more efficient ways of doing things, I guess, would be the best way of, um, you know, I've mentioned earlier in this video, Napoleon Hill talks about organized planning. Um, Also, another thing is, you know, decision making. You want to avoid procrastination. He talks about persistence, and personal initiative. So if you're just combining everything together, um, you're just gonna create a system that kind of snowballs that like looks like it has a lot of moving parts, but everything, you know, has a way of multiplying the effort by thinking in a certain way, doing things in a certain way, just, putting all the pieces to have the snowball avalanche over time. So you'll want to combine some pieces from all three of these books. Every day you'll want to do something that either advances your definite purpose by creation or value delivery. You'll want to improve your earning ability, which is suggested from the richest man in Babylon. Increase the ability to earn, and or you'll want to protect and grow your capital through um, by persisting through setbacks. Napoleon Hill calls this sustained effort that turns desire into reality. So those are some things that you could do daily, but then some more daily or weekly things that you could add to your routine. For the morning, maybe 5 or 10 minutes. Um, Read your definite purpose statement out loud with emotion and faith. Um, Throughout the day, act efficiently in your current role while seeking ways to create more value. Financial discipline, you want to automate the 10% to go towards savings that the savings will then be invested, and that investment will turn your gold or that 10% to more income. In the evening, you could take 5 minutes to ask yourself things like, did I advance my purpose today? Did I save and invest? Did I learn and improve earning power? And then weekly, you could review your progress, adjust your plans, and seek mastermind input as needed, which um, both the Science of Getting Rich and Think and Grow Rich kind of touch on the idea of the mastermind. So obviously, if it's occurring in a couple of different books, it obviously must be important. So hopefully, you found some value in the way I was discussing how to combine um, ideas from these three books. Thanks and have a good day.